I especially want to take this occasion to congratulate China and the Communist Party. I think on its 100th, it is the anniversary of the CPC. Also, in Pakistan, we admire President Xi Jinping as one of the great statesmen of the modern world. We have admiration for him in Pakistan for two particular reasons. One, his commitment to fight corruption. The commitment that a society there must be rule of law in a society. In other words, the powerful must be brought under the law. And corruption is, when it destroys a country, it is when there is a corrupt elite which does not bring itself under the rule of law, and they are the ones who do the maximum damage. So I have watched the corruption drive, anti-corruption drive of President Xi Jinping, and we here in Pakistan are very impressed by the way he has so many high-level officials, ministerial-level people have been held accountable for their corruption. Secondly, and the most remarkable thing about China, which we all admire, is that the way they have brought so many millions of people out of poverty. The figure we are told is almost 700 million people have been brought out of poverty in the last 6-7 years. And recently, China announced that China has finally eliminated extreme poverty. I don't think there is any precedent in history of a society achieving these great goals. Our interaction with the Chinese officials, that version of what is happening in Xinjiang is completely different to the version of what we hear from the Western media and the Western governments. So, because we have a very strong relationship with China, and because we have a relationship based on trust, so we actually accept the Chinese version. You know, what they say about their programs in Xinjiang, so we accept it. The second point is that we find it a little bit hypocritical when there are much worse human rights issues in the world which get no attention. For instance, in Kashmir. Kashmir is a huge human rights problem. There are about 9 million, 8 million Kashmiris which are basically has been put into an open prison until recently. It's a police state where there are extrajudicial killings, there's imprisonment, there's arbitrary arrests and a ban on media, and yet there is hardly any adverse comment in the Western media. 100,000 Kashmiris have died in the last 30 years for a freedom struggle. It's a disputed territory. Yet you hardly get any coverage in the Western media, and we hear about Xinjiang and Hong Kong, which is a bit hypocritical. The biggest mistake made by the Americans was that they kept on trying to find a military solution in Afghanistan when there was not one. They kept doing the same thing over and over and over again and thought they would get a different result. Because Afghanistan has a history, and they just cannot be dictated from outside. They do not accept outside power intervention. They do not like to be controlled from powers from outside. That's the history. And so even when countries have conquered Afghanistan, like the British did in the 19th century, and then the Soviets invaded Afghanistan in the 20th century, you can invade Afghanistan, but when you stay there, it is very difficult to control the country because they are very independent-minded people. So this war in Afghanistan went on too long. It has created deep divisions in the Afghan society. When a war goes on for that long, when on both sides people have died, families have suffered, to bring them back together is not very easy. It takes time. And now what you're seeing in Afghanistan is that the moment the Americans decided there was no military solution, they gave a date of exit. And the moment they gave a date of exit, the Taliban, who were opposing the Americans, considered that as a victory. Now, when they think they won the war, it's very difficult to make them, from Pakistan point of view, to make them then come to some sort of a political settlement becomes very difficult. One, because if the war went on too long, there are deep divisions. Secondly, once they feel they won the war, it's very difficult to make them now get back together. And so the worrying thing for Pakistan is that if Afghanistan has a civil war there, just like it had civil war after the Soviets left in 1989, then the consequences will be, after Afghanistan, the country that will suffer the most is going to be Pakistan. For me, where I see this relationship moving ahead, and I mean the economic relationship, because there is the political relationship, which is also very strong and moving ahead. But purely the economic relationship, I see the next phase of CPAC. And the next phase is for Pakistan, which is very exciting. We have these special economic zones, and we hope that we hope to attract Chinese industry into these special economic zones by giving them incentives, because in Pakistan the labor is much cheaper than in China, so we hope to attract that industry, which will benefit from our cheaper labor. And secondly, where we really want help from China, and we're already working on it, is agriculture. Because in China, the productivity, your agricultural productivity is much higher than Pakistan. Pakistan is basically an agricultural country. And we haven't really concentrated so much on our agriculture to improve our productivity. So this is the second phase, because almost half our population lives off agriculture. And therefore, we hope that we can really benefit from the latest techniques in agriculture from China. I think, first of all, the way China dealt with COVID was unique. I mean, considering that this pandemic started in China, the way China coped with it, and then when you look at the rest of the world, China really stands out in the way they dealt with this pandemic. And we are very thankful to China, because the way they helped us, the way they donated the vaccine to us. And really, Pakistan is after China, Pakistan is one of those countries which has actually done very well in the way that we dealt with the pandemic, the way which we coped with it. So Pakistan stands out, in this whole region. And one of the reasons is that China provided us the vaccine very early on, and where we immediately vaccinated the health workers. The first thing we did was vaccinate the health workers, and then went for the vulnerable groups. So, the people who were most at risk and we were all worried about were the health workers, because, they had to deal with the patients. And so we were always worried that, if they became demoralized, then, our health system would fail. So when we were able to, thanks to China, we were able to vaccinate them, that gave us a lot of confidence. For Pakistan, there was always a very special relationship with China, although our relationship started 70 years ago. But, China, whenever Pakistan was in trouble, whenever I'm in trouble politically, internationally, when we had conflicts with our neighbor, China always stood with us. So the people of China have a special place in the hearts of people of Pakistan, because everyone here remembers You know, you only remember a friend who stands with you in your difficult times. In good times, everyone stands with you. But in your difficult, tough times, bad times, you remember those people who stood by you. That's why you will find that in Pakistan, people always have a special fondness for people of China. So this relationship has only got stronger. Even now, politically, you know, on the international forums, Pakistan and China always stand together. And now, when you talk about the region, there's this strange great power rivalry taking place. You know, you see the United States and the United States being wary of China, and you know, I don't need to say all this is now public knowledge. You know, the way China and the United States are sort of looking at each other. So it creates problem, because what United States is doing is it's formed this regional alliance called the Quad, which is US, India, and then, you know, a couple of other countries. So from that point of view, Pakistan thinks that it is very unfair for the US or other powers, Western powers, for countries like us to take sides. Why do we have to take sides? We should have good relationship with everyone. Well, I watched on television, of course, the Olympics in China. And you always find that a country that is on the ascendancy, its sports also follows in the same direction. It also, in sporting, I mean, China, if you look back, China's performance 30 years ago, and now you compare now in Olympics, China is now the emerging power in sports as well. So the two go together, because all the skills, the institutionalization that goes into a nation building and a nation moving forward are exactly the same in which a nation's sports move forward. You compete internationally in sports, the better you become, the better your institutions become, which can sift talent and bring merit on the top. So a small country like New Zealand just now, I know you don't play cricket in China, but a country which of 5 million people has just won the Cricket World Championship from India, which has 1.3 billion people. And 5 million people, a country of 5 million people has actually won a championship against them, because they have a very good system of sifting, bringing up talent and polishing it. So countries clearly which institutionalize better, they move upwards, because the system of polishing the talent in the country is better than the others. What I experienced when I went to, on the invitation of President Xi Jinping, what I noticed was the amount of work China is now doing in terms of improving the environment, fighting global warming. The awareness in China, in fact, President Xi Jinping hosted a program now I forget what city is, a special city which is just built. It's an environmentally green city, specifically built, which we were invited to. I don't remember the name of the city, but we went there, and everything there is environmentally friendly. So China is making great strides towards that. And I think the future of mankind, the biggest threat mankind faces is through this climate change, global warming. And China really, when President Xi Jinping hosted this conference, he invited leaders from all over the world, and it was just, the theme was how to save mankind from this catastrophe which is called climate change and global warming. You see, President Xi Jinping, when I spoke to him, and Premier Li, what struck me was that the the process which they have come through to become the Prime Minister and the President. They started work 30 years ago, and they started working right from the canton, the real village level. And from there, they worked all the way up. They went through all the processes. So really, it's that long struggle which is what makes a leader. And that sort of process is not prevalent in most of the countries that claim to have electoral democracy. You do not have that sort of process. So you look at the American president, he does not go through that sort of rigorous training for leadership like President Xi Jinping and Premier Lee. And the way they work themselves up and the experience they got all the way from village and then to the province and higher levels. So when they get to the top, they are experienced, they completely understand the system, they understand how people live at the bottom, and which is why they have been able to create this wonder of bringing so many millions of people out of poverty. So this is something quite unique for China. You do not see that in any other democratic system. I think, leave alone the rivalry now between America and China, this economic rivalry. But I can tell you that the world, no matter whatever they think of China, because there's a fear of China's economic dominance now. But apart from that, everyone has to admire what President Xi Jinping has done. His achievements, you see, leaders' achievements speak for themselves. And that's what President Xi Jinping has proved to the world. The CPC is a unique model. Until now, we were told that the best way of societies improving themselves is the Western system of democracy. And we were told that that is the best way of progress of a society. But what the CPC has done is that it has brought this alternate model, and they have actually beaten all Western democracies in the way they have brought up merit in the society. You see, what is remarkable, a society succeeds if that society has systems which bring two things forward: meritocracy and accountability. Accountability of the ruling elite, which means a transparent system, which is very important for progress, and secondly, which brings up merit in a society. So until now, the feeling was that democracy is electoral democracy is the best way where you get merit, leadership based on merit, and then hold that leadership accountable. But what CPC has done is that without that electoral democracy, it has actually achieved that and much better. What I saw in China when I visited the Communist Party headquarters and when they gave us briefings, their system of sifting talent and then grooming it and bringing it up, for me is probably more remarkable than any democratic electoral democracy does not bring up that sort of meritocracy or can hold people accountable. And third thing is that it's a very flexible system. When they want to change something, that system allows them to bring a change. And fourthly, of course, the long-term planning. They plan so far ahead. Sometimes in a democracy, you only, in an electoral democracy, you only look for the next 5 years, and it contradicts long-term planning.